The Reverend George Floyd Rogers wrote the following paragraph as the beginning of a booklet he published in 1911 entitled A Call from Our Mountains. 5 years ago, a worker in concrete, while laying a walk in our rectory yard, half lifted himself from his work and said, "I live 3 miles over that mountain and my children can't read. They can't go to Sunday school because we ain't got none and never had any. Can't you get us a Sunday school and fix it up so our children can learn to read?" This was the call from our mountains.
What has been finally gotten through my thick head is that we're running out of people that know the history of Boys Home. We're running out of people who studied the history of Boys Home and have done things to try to kind of keep the flavor going. Martha, who this is named for, really spent a lot of time kind of putting stuff together in here. And this is really where you can learn the most about Boys Home. When I come in here and do a tour in here, everything in this room brings a story to mind, brings an item to mind that helps me tell the story of Boys Home. All right, I want to start with Boys Home in the church because that's really where it's at. And I want to kind of connect, show the connection that we've had with the Episcopal Church in particular, because that is our history. And I want to kind of talk you through some of the things that occurred along the way. You may know some, you may not. If you've read the history in the manual, the staff manual, you know a little bit about it. If you've picked up a brochure, you know a little bit about it. If you haven't been through the brochures that are back over here, you ought to really come in and just browse through them because they go back a long ways. All of those were produced for different aspects of different ways. Up there are also the Boys Appeal articles in those black books up there. And if you haven't been through those, you ought to pull them out and just leaf through them and see how things have progressed through the years, because we've tried to in this room, we've tried to gather things that would be of interest and help people understand Boys Home. All right, in the beginning, that's a good start for a church. In the beginning, the Reverend George Floyd Rogers was approached by a workman about doing something out here in western Allegheny County. And he wanted something done for the children. The workman's focus was on the children. He said, you know, we come to work, we leave the children back in the hollows over next to West Virginia, all the way out to West Virginia line, and they don't have anything to do. There are no churches, there are no stores, there are no schools. There's nothing out there except us. And so when we leave them out there, they are subject to whatever happens, and without adult supervision. And so they asked him to do something. So what he did was he came out and found an abandoned log cabin and gathered a cadre of volunteers to come in and to basically do a daycare center. And in today's words, it would be a daycare center. What they had him do, what they did was they taught him reading, writing, arithmetic, but most importantly, they gave them a place to be with some adult supervision while their parents were away. Then very early in that time frame, the Reverend George Floyd Rogers went to the Diocese of Southern Virginia and said, you know, this is happening out here. We need you to get involved, meaning the diocese. The Diocese of Southern Virginia stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to Cumberland Gap. And if you know your geography in Virginia, that's over 500 miles. And it was a big place. And so getting a delegation out here to look and do and to decide whether or not they were going to be involved was a major thing. They had like a 2-day train ride to get out here, look at the place, and get back to where they came from. But a delegation came, and from that was issued a call from the mountain. Call from the mountain basically said that there was more to be done than just a daycare center. There needed to be something in the area to teach them beyond daycare, to get them ready to move on in life, and to do things that would help this area in terms of their children's learning and their children's opportunities. And at the same time, before they even got it started, they realized that there was a homeless issue. There were need for a residential type of a setting. So this was formalized, and it was called A Call from the Mountains, and they created Grace Mission. And Grace Mission was centered around this little church right here. And they that little church was built down in the flats down here right beside the cemetery. And they obtained that stretch of land through there. There's about 90 acres of potato and corn farming that went on down through there, onion farming. And they obtained that, and they obtained with that the farmhouse. The farmhouse is up here. The farmhouse is located right here. And in that picture over there, you can see it on the left-hand side, those pen and inks. That farmhouse was really the only building that was down there when they obtained it. And then they disassembled and reassembled a log cabin, not the original log cabin, for the superintendent to live in, and built a bungalow for the kids to live in. They built the chapel, and they built a school. And that was the first campus, the major campus, that was put together to take care of children. The story goes that two of these young men right here, his mother was without a place to live. And she came to them early in the time frame, and she said, when they were in just the log cabin, and she said to them, I would like to, I need a place to live. You let me live in the cabin. When school's not going on, I'll teach during school. I'll take care of school. So she became the first house mother, so to speak. But she was basically taking care of them only during the day and her kids at night. So when they built this first campus, she placed her kids at Boys Home in one way and made a life for herself. And so even very early in the time frame, there was this move and this need identified for a place for residential care. Okay, so they began to really start thinking about what to do. And the church at that time, the Diocese of Southern Virginia, really came together and started putting things together. They put at that time, if you were a church mission, which we were, you had like a board of managers instead of a board of directors, like a board of managers. And they had a committee primarily out of the Tidewater area, came together and kind of oversaw what was taking place for the Diocese of Southern Virginia. If you really have trouble sleeping, I'll give you a box full of handwritten minutes from 1913, 1914. Let's sit down and read them things, because they really talk a lot about what went on in that time frame and what took place to make this place the way it is today. Really interesting. But the church continued to support Boys Home primarily through Episcopal Church women organizations and funds of the Episcopal Church. There were different funds, different organizations within the Episcopal Church at that time that really would support someone. So they found those, got the support started, and really began to build the support picture for Boys Home. Then in about 1913 or so, George Floyd Rogers was sent to Lynchburg to start up St. John's Episcopal Church there, to actually plant a church there. And this gentleman Chris Thurber was the superintendent, even though George Floyd Rogers was still the primary person. Still working for a board of managers rather than an independent board. Then in 1919, around 1919, decision was made to split the Diocese of Southern Virginia in two dioceses. Okay, so if you look at a line from, say, about Charlottesville down to Danville, everything to the west of that became the Diocese of Southwestern Virginia. Everything to the east of it stayed the Diocese of Southern Virginia. And the northern boundary was what's approximately Interstate 64 now. If you take 64 and make it into a straight line, everything south of that was at one time Diocese of Southern Virginia, then became a Diocese of Southwestern, Diocese of Southern. Now, what ended up happening is Boys Home was a mission of the Diocese of Southern Virginia. We're now physically located in the new Diocese of Southwestern Virginia. Any of you ever get involved with any decision making at the Episcopal Church level or at the church level? Let's just say the church level. Long drawn out process. It takes a long time. Well, it took until 1925 to really define what the relationship between Boys Home and the two dioceses were going to be. And so what ended up happening was Boys Home incorporated and became affiliated with the two dioceses. But we were run by a separate board. We're no longer a direct mission of the church, but we are affiliated mission with the church. Now that means that now we got to scramble. We got to kind of figure out how we're going to get the support to make all this work. The affiliation of the two churches really gave Boys Home the opportunity to go into the Episcopal churches in both dioceses. The affiliation also made it possible for us to draw our leadership, our board leadership, from both dioceses, both clergy and laypersons, and that's a story in itself, looking at the transformation of the way in which Boys Home was governed. So anyway, we ended up with leadership from both dioceses and able to connect with both dioceses. In 1916, the Reverend, at that time, the Dr. E. Reinhold Rogers, he was a PhD in education. He had actually was running Jefferson School in Charlottesville, and he was brought to Boys Home to succeed his brother, because his brother was getting to the place to where he was going to have to move on and do something else. So Dr. Rogers became the Reverend Dr. Rogers by doing what's called reading for your orders. He would sit and he would get a reading list assignment. He'd go read, and then he'd come back and he would discuss what he read with a group of ordained people in the Episcopal Church, who would then decide whether or not he knew enough about whatever they decided he needed to know about to be an ordained person. And they decided he was, so he was ordained and became the Reverend Dr. E. Reinhold Rogers and ran Boys Home from then on. Actually, he was just a doctor when he started the process of running Boys Home. Chris Thurber, who had been sick in 1915, got well, and then he kind of saw the handwriting on the wall when they brought in Dr. Rogers, and he kind of figured out that, his spot at Boys Home was probably not going to be what he thought it was going to be. So he decided he was going to leave, and they parted ways, and he went to Greece, where he started up a retirement home. And as near as we can tell, he died in Greece and was buried in Greece. We looked for him all over the place. He was reincarnated as Peyton Manning and led a few football teams to championships, in case you can't pick that up. Why affiliate? Why affiliate with the Episcopal Church? Well, a couple of reasons. One is it was felt that the Episcopal Church, by really doing the hard work, the grunt work to get us started, and because of the way in which they went about doing it, there was a need for us to continue that connection, to make that connection part of our history and part of our culture. And we've tried to continue that to today. We continue to try to cultivate here the kind of environment and the kind of ethos, for lack of a better word, that the Episcopal Church says they want to do. And to put those beliefs that they have about children and needs into action. And that's really why we wanted, that's the major reason we wanted to continue, because those philosophies that are there, if you read the Articles of Incorporation, the first set, you can see this, that comes across very clearly. The second one was we needed to have that affiliation so we had a base of support to work with. We needed the Episcopal, people sitting in the pews of the Episcopal churches, we needed them to learn about and to grow with and to begin to support Boys Home in a way that make it possible for us to do what they said they wanted us to do. And so that affiliation really became critical to our success. If we had not done that, we probably would not have lasted as long as we lasted. The support wouldn't have been there. There wouldn't have been the drive to do it. There wouldn't have been the feel that you get at this place if we had not had that base of support. And the reason is we would have had to do things differently. We would have had to do things that over time the state began to pay for, tax dollars began to pay for. And as tax dollars began to pay for things, rightly, they expected certain results and they expected certain things to take place. And so they began to impact the way in which places like Boys Home was serving kids. And they impacted it in ways that over time, the leadership of Boys Home through the board of trustees said, we don't want to go that way. We want to go back to the way that we started. We want to go back to where we're serving children to get them ready to go out in the world and be productive citizens. That's what we're founded for. It's in the incorporation. You read the original Articles of Incorporation and it talks about inculcating certain things in them. And look it up. I had to inculcate. So anyway, they decided that, back in, the board has decided to kind of try to maintain that connection, try to maintain that freedom, so to speak, the option of being able to do it in a way that our founders envisioned us being able to do it, rather than do it as an extension of what, say, Department of Social Services or Department of Juvenile Justice would want us to do. And so even though it looks like, we're pretty uptight most of the time about the way we do things, we really aren't. And you probably know that quite well, don't you? It's a whole lot different. Because we do have this affiliation, have built this connection within the church folks, it has made it possible for us to really focus on what do the kids need. What can we do that is in the best interest of the kids? They're kids. They don't believe what we're doing is in their best interest, and probably no kid ever will. However, over time, we've done things in a way that's allowed us to understand that there are some things some endpoints that we really need to get to before they leave us if we're going to put them out there and they're going to be successful when they get out there. So this gives us that opportunity, and that's why the affiliation, that's why we focus so strongly on that affiliation and what that affiliation brings to us. All right, let's roll of the church today and going forward. Okay, now when we say church, now we don't just mean the Episcopal Church when we talk about our involvement with the church today. You've seen Northside Baptist Church, you've seen Bells Valley Worship Center, you've seen all Presbyterian work groups, you've seen all kinds of folks who believe in the work we're doing, not necessarily that they're connected with the Episcopal Church, but they believe in the work we're doing. And so they have decided that we are going to be part of what they do. And we're trying now to extend beyond the walls of the Episcopal churches and try to find people who believe in the work we're doing, who are church people, because we believe that those folks are probably going to be where we will be able to continue to do what we've done for over 100 years for the next 100 years. And so the focus is now on church-affiliated people more so than it is on just the Episcopal Church. So when we talk about church now, we talk about the church at large. We're not just talking about the Episcopal Church. Obviously, because of the history and connection, the Episcopal Church is still very important to us in what we're doing. Very important in getting the word out and getting them to understand what the Diocese of Southern Virginia started back in 1900s, and try to continue that forward. So going forward, we will be looking to strengthen the tie with the Episcopal Church, and we have several different things going on to make that happen. And we will also, at the same time, we're going to expand beyond the Episcopal Church and begin to start letting people know in other denominations, or in some cases, non-denominational worship centers, let them know what we're doing and how we're going about it, and give them an opportunity to be part of what we're doing, because it is an opportunity for them. They're looking for things to be involved with. Every church wants to have some focus that they can have, and I can't think of one any better myself, personally, than being able to help us serve the kids that come to us. Now, I'll take any questions about Boys Home and the church that you might have, so I can quit talking. Anybody got any questions? None? No, I didn't do that good a job, did I? No? All right, then we'll go to part two. Part two is, and if you, okay.
What's the relationship between the parishes and the churches and Boys Home? There's donations, but what else? What's been the past, and what's your vision going forward?
Well, when I go into a parish, I tell them we want to be part of your life if you're part of our life, and I encourage them to involve us with anything they're doing. We've made mission trips with groups. We have helped several different parishes with things that they're doing. An example of that, St. Thomas over in White Sulphur Springs has a big yard sale, and most of it are elderly women that have grown through the church, and they've got stuff stored all over the place. We go over and help them set it up, and then the boys actually shop and go through, and they give them a break on it. Some kid came back with a fake Rolex one time. He thought he had a jewel, and but they can spend their money over if they choose to. We do things like that. We help with tonight. We will help with pancake supper down at Emmanuel. I've taken young men to men's breakfast in churches, and we actually join up with the group and help put it on and participate and help them clean up and leave afterwards. So it's really what the parish will invite us in to do, and then we follow through on. We do whatever they wish us to. There's 3 levels in trying to strengthen the tie to the church. There are 3 levels. There's the spiritual level, where we agree, and we need to formalize this on our end a little bit more. We agree to pray for the parish while they're praying for us. They pray for us. They pray specifically for us. In some cases, they'll get a birthday list, and they'll pray for the birthdays in a month's worth of time. Some cases, they'll pray for a specific young man that they've sponsored at Christmas time, and they'll pray for the ministry. We are supposed to be praying for them, and we will, like I said, we need to make it a little more formal. The second level is involvement. That's where they can come here and do mission work. We can go to their places and do what they are working on. Many of the parishes are involved in things like Habitat for Humanity. And what we've told them is we've got young men that are training in HVAC. When you're doing a Habitat for Humanity project, we're willing to bring the class and work on that project with you as part of what you're doing, just so that there's some involvement, some crossover between the parishes and this. We have about 4 or 5 regular visits from parishes going on years now, several years, and they do different things. And we make sure that we're back in their community whenever we get an opportunity, back in their community to do something with them. And the last level is some financial commitment that they make towards us. And there's really not much more we can do than be involved with them. But when it gets to the financial level, it's a decision that the church makes. Some of them will jump straight to the financial level, and they're not too concerned about the others. But really and truly, it's not the parish outreach group or the diocese that what we're hoping to connect with. We're hoping to connect with the people in the pews so that they are knowledgeable of us, what we're doing, and that they personally become involved in some capacity with us. And that's really our goal with any church we go to. That raise any more questions? Well, you are a real easy group. All right, now the test. You ready?
Yeah, whenever they're ready, just walk in.
Okay. Come on in.
Okay, need to do over again without him pointing them in. Stop. Stop. Back out. Count to 5 and then come in again.
Stop being. I hope you're really good at editing.
I can't change that.
Nice face.
That how I go?
You're happy and glad to be your face. Okay.
Use two hands.
Great.